For decades, borderline personality disorder, or BPD, has been one of the most stigmatized and misunderstood conditions out there. But a revolution in brain science is completely changing that conversation. It's offering not just a new way to understand it, but real, science-based hope. So let's dive right in.
I mean, look at this shift. It's dramatic. What used to be written off as a character flaw or someone just being difficult is now finally being seen for what it actually is, a treatable disorder that has clear biological roots right inside the brain. And that's not just a small change in words. It is a massive, fundamental shift in how we approach the immense suffering that comes with BPD. So in this explainer, we're going to walk through 4 key parts. First, we'll get into the proof that BPD is brain-based. Then we'll look at its 2-part origin story. We're going to use a really powerful analogy, an accelerator and a brake, to see exactly how the brain's wiring is affected. And then, the best part, we'll explore the incredible science of how therapy can literally, physically rewire the brain for recovery. So, how did we even figure all this out? Well, the absolute game changer was neuroimaging technology. Things like fMRI, which lets us peek inside a living brain while it's working. For the very first time, scientists could move past just theories and actually see the biological reality of what's happening. And what they found is just profound. The scientific consensus now is that BPD is a form of brain dysfunction. This puts it in the same category as other neurodevelopmental conditions. And this is so important because it moves BPD out of that shadow of judgment and character flaws and puts it squarely into the world of medical science, where it belongs.
Okay, so if it's a brain dysfunction, where does it come from? It's not just one thing. The answer is this really powerful combination of nature and nurture. It's a 2-part origin story.
The framework that really helps us understand this is called the biosocial theory, and it was developed by the brilliant Dr. Marshall Linehan. What it suggests is that BPD doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It happens from the collision, the interaction between 2 critical factors: a biological sensitivity you're born with, and a very specific kind of environment. Let's break that down. So, part 1 is biology. This means being born with a brain that's just naturally wired to feel emotions with incredible intensity. Part 2 is the social part, growing up in what's called an invalidating environment. This is any environment, family, school, community, where those intense feelings you have are constantly dismissed, maybe even punished. You're told you're just overreacting or toughen up. It's that chronic friction between the highly sensitive person and a world that doesn't get it that really sets the stage. So what does that friction actually look like inside the brain? To really get a handle on the specific brain circuits involved, we're going to use a simple but really powerful analogy. Think of a car with a super sensitive accelerator and a set of faulty brakes. This quote just nails it. A runaway emotional accelerator and a faulty rational brake. It perfectly captures the core issue that neuroscientists have found. You have the parts of the brain that create emotion acting like an accelerator that's just stuck to the floor, while the parts responsible for logic and control act like brakes that just can't get a grip. This imbalance is really at the heart of the whole BPD experience. Let's look at that accelerator. It's mainly driven by 2 areas. First, you have the amygdala. That's your brain's little threat detector. In BPD, it's hyperreactive. It sees threat and rejection everywhere, even in a totally neutral facial expression. Then you've got the insula. Think of this as the emotion amplifier. It takes that emotional pain from the amygdala and cranks it up so high that it feels like a physical sensation. That's that raw, gut-wrenching, my chest is going to explode feeling. So, while that accelerator is floored, the brakes are barely working. The prefrontal cortex, or PFC, that's kind of like the brain's CEO, the rational part, it's underactive. So it has a really hard time applying top-down control to cool down those emotions or stop an impulse. At the same time, another area, the anterior cingulate cortex, or ACC, struggles to shift attention. This is why a person can get stuck, ruminating on a negative feeling, just unable to let it go. And here's where you can see the problem in action. In a neurotypical brain, when the amygdala's threat alarm goes off, the PFC sends a strong, clear signal back that says, hey, it's okay, we're safe, stand down. But in the BPD brain, that calming signal from the PFC is weak. It's like a bad phone connection. It just doesn't get through. And so the amygdala's alarm keeps blaring, triggering that overwhelming emotional flood. What is absolutely fascinating is that we can map the major symptoms of BPD directly to these specific dysfunctional brain networks. It's not random.
So you see here, the intense emotion dysregulation, the mood swings, the anger, that links directly to that broken frontal limbic circuitry, our accelerator and brake system. The impulsivity is tied to a weak cognitive control network. That's the part that's supposed to say, hey, maybe don't do that. The intense interpersonal issues, like the fear of abandonment, connect to the social cognition network, the system that's supposed to help you read other people correctly. And even identity disturbance, that unstable sense of self, is linked to issues in the default mode network, which is the brain's hub for self-reflection. It all lines up.
Okay, I know all of this might sound a bit deterministic, maybe even a little bleak, but this is where the story takes a really hopeful turn, because the brain is not fixed. It is not permanent. So let's get to our final section and see how we can actually use this science to rewire the brain for recovery. The key to everything, the absolute foundation of hope, is this concept called neuroplasticity. It's a scientific fact that our brains are constantly actively changing and building new pathways based on our experiences. Your brain isn't set in stone. Think of it more like clay. It's malleable and it can be reshaped throughout your entire life. And this leads us to such a crucial insight. Effective therapy isn't just talking. It's a highly targeted form of brain training. It's like physical therapy, but for your neural circuits. It's an active process designed to strengthen the pathways that are weak and to calm down the circuits that are way too overactive. Let's take dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, which is the gold standard treatment. The skills it teaches are essentially direct brain exercises. When you practice mindfulness, you are literally strengthening your ACC, improving your brain's ability to control its focus. When you practice emotion regulation skills, you're doing reps that train your PFC, your rational brain, to calm down your amygdala. And distress tolerance skills, they build up the PFC's muscle to hit the brakes on those destructive impulses. And here's the best part. We have proof. This is not a theory. Brain scans taken before and after a course of effective therapy show measurable physical changes. You can actually see the amygdala's hyperactivity go down. You can see the prefrontal cortex become more active when it needs to be. And, most importantly, you can see that communication line, that connection between the rational PFC and the emotional amygdala, get stronger and healthier. So, when you put it all together, what it means is that recovery is not about trying to become some different person through sheer force of will. It's about giving your brain the exercises, the training it needs to heal its own connections and get back into balance. It's about healing your biology, not fixing some imaginary flaw in your character. And that leaves us with a pretty incredible thought to end on. We've seen how the intense suffering of BPD has a clear biological basis, but we've also seen that the brain has this remarkable built-in capacity for healing. So if therapy is a tool that can physically change the brain, what does that mean for the future of recovery? Not just for BPD, but for all of mental health. The science is pointing to a future that is, finally, grounded in real, tangible hope.